Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injury clinic.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm here with Dan Sostek. Dan, we got some baseball teams and softball teams playing for state titles here in Central PA, and Eric Epler went on vacation. What do you think about all that?
My sources have told me this vacation was in well before the PIAA set their schedule, so it kind of seems like a conspiracy to make Ep look bad, if you ask me. But,
what does it say about his faith, though, in our local teams? I mean, when you look down the line, you realize that regardless of when they set their schedules, we could have had teams playing for a state championship.
Well, who should be really mad is Cedar Cliff quarterback Bennett Seacrest, who's playing for a state title with the Colts. Colts have a decent amount of baseball players on that team. I guess they can use it as extra fuel, and maybe when he tries to interview them after they win a title, that they can stick their nose up him and say, you didn't believe we're talking to Evan Whedon instead.
I guess so, Dan. I guess so. I'll tell you what, man. I had faith. I knew they could do it all along. I don't know. Whatever you think of Epler for being off the shore in his boat, catching fish, snagging fish while kids are securing the bag, the chip, take it easy on the guy. He deserves to blow off a little steam, I suppose. But Dan,
this has been a pretty good year for the Mid-Penn in terms of just so many sports getting state finalists. I think Trinity's only the second boys lacrosse team ever make. The conference had state finalists, and I wrote down a list: football, boys soccer, girls volleyball, boys basketball, baseball, softball, boys lacrosse, boys volleyball, state champs in boys cross country, boys wrestling, girls wrestling, boys track and field, and girls track and field. So shout out to all the Mid-Penn athletes. It's been a pretty banner year.
They've had a really great streak. I mean, we go back, 2 or 3 winter seasons ago, I think. They had that huge winter season, I think, or was it fall season, where we had the soccer teams win and a couple field hockey teams win and football. They put together some really solid year. I mean, the Mid-Penn has a legitimately good argument that it's the best all-around sports conference in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think for a while you could have argued the Whippeal was maybe the most consistent across sports, and then the Philly leagues have always been, when they're good, they're really, really good. But the Mid-Penn is really, like, across all these different sports, has created a real consistent just churn out of every sport. There's at least a couple teams that are area power or statewide powerhouses.
Yeah, so I mentioned Epler's out, and it's kind of fitting because this week, I think when we started this podcast way back when it was first, like, Nebby Asias, we put out like a mailbag. We put out our email addresses, and if anybody has any questions, you can always email me at blinder@PennLive.com or dsostek@PennLive.com. You could certainly shoot us your questions, but we actually got a couple mailbag questions this week, and they were actually, a lot of them were involved me and you. Yeah, the first one is from Ralphus in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, back towards my way. And he said, Brian, listening to you on the PA High School Football Report is the joy of my week. You have become an inspiration to both me and my son. Little Ralphie would like an autographed copy of your first book. I've enclosed a check for, I won't say the amount, it's pretty significant, and our address. It would mean so much to him if you personalized it. Anyway, I bet a lot of your listeners also play fantasy football. That's true, Dan. We talk about fantasy on here sometimes. And he said, and I remember last year, Dan Sostek had some amazing tips, such as Bryce Young and Jonathan Brooks being potential league winners. Was wondering if Dan had any hot takes for the season coming up. My draft is in a couple weeks.
The gaslighting on this podcast where Brian just makes up stuff.
Dan, hot takes. Who are we picking this year?
Here's my hot take. Anthony Richardson's not going to play a single down, and you're going to be sad all year as Tyler Warren catches.
I don't have to worry. We got Daniel Jones. My Colts have Daniel Jones.
Oh, there you go. Everything's looking up.
Top 5 pick. And third rounder Desmond Ritter's coming into camp. So, I mean, we're loaded with young, talented quarterbacks, man.
All right, my hot take is I could just go full on bias and just say Drake May is going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year, which I don't even think is that hot considering he runs. But I'll go with a kind of topical one. I think Aaron Rodgers has a good season this year. Top 50.
That would be good for Steelers fans. People in Pennsylvania would like it. I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers guy, but hey, he actually had.
If you go back and watch some of his games at the end of the year last year, he really did they weren't winning those games, but he actually didn't look that bad. And you kind of wonder if in a more stable organization than the New York Jets, if he has because he's done this a couple times where everyone's kind of pronounced him dead, and then he has a good season again. So it wouldn't shock.
I mean, his numbers last year were actually but looking at his numbers were not terrible. I mean,
and that was in a disaster of a situation, just a mess. Now, with more organization, I could just see everyone making all the jokes all off season, and then him just being pretty good, and not Super Bowl level good or MVP good, but better than Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and enough to win 10 plus games. That was my thought when they signed him. I was like, everyone's going to make fun of this, and they'll probably work out all right because stuff does tend to work out okay for the Steelers.
Yeah. I talked to our guy, Nick Farabaugh, who covers the Steelers. You guys should check him out at PennLive.com. I think Harrisburg's Dante Kent, who they drafted in the 7th round, I think he's off to a decent start, I think, in camp. I know Nick talked to him some. Really, I said, I've driven that kid around Harrisburg. I had to go get him to get a photo shoot one time. He's a great kid. Mom, Kent's great family and stuff. But, well, there you go. So you got a hot take. You're drafting Aaron Rodgers, I assume, late.
I mean, if you're going 0 QB, I wouldn't hate ending up with him as one of your swings at QB, because I imagine he's going at the very end of drafts.
I want to DK Metcalf.
If you're going QB early, I really do think I don't know how good the Patriots are going to be, but I think May with McDaniels is going to be pretty good.
Well, there you go. See, look, you were resistant to the mailbag. We got one more, though. We got one more from Douglas in Biglerville. He said, Brian, I cannot say enough about how informative and awe-inspiring your wisdom is on the PA High School Football Report podcast.
Slander
it is truly a highlight of my day to see that new podcast pop up and to be blessed with your knowledge and wisdom. The new EA Sports College game is coming out next month, and I know you guys talked about last year's game a lot. The last update you guys provided, you beat Dan by 4 or 5 touchdowns and were supposed to play again. I was wondering if that game ever happened and what the result was. Looking forward to hearing about the matchups in this year's game. I've enclosed my gamer tag and a gift card for a year on the Xbox Network. Well, thank you for your generous gift, Douglas. And Dan, you want to tell people you never played me again? Are we going to play in a new game this year?
Well, considering you're allowed to lie about these made up Douglas and Biglerville people, I'm going to lie and say that I beat you 65-0 in the decisive game. I also think you're going to get sued by an actual Douglas in Biglerville because there has to be one Douglas in Biglerville.
Douglas in Biglerville is a big fan of mine, apparently. He likes my awe-inspiring wisdom, and along with the Ralphus in Mont's Corner. I enjoy the fans. We never did play again. I'm looking forward to playing Dan in the new game, which comes out next month. Dan, how do you feel about the new game?
I'm not sure if I'm buying it. I don't trust EA after this one game to make another good one. This is what they do. This is the EA game plan. They make one good game every 10 years, and they just put in the new rosters, add one silly feature, and say, look at this. It's a new game.
It wasn't a bad game last year.
No, it was a great game, but I'm saying that I just don't think it's going to be worth the $80 or whatever you have to pay to get it. And also, everyone's staying in college now, because of NIL. So it's the rosters are going to basically be the same. You're basically paying for a game to not have Travis Hunter in. I'd rather play the game with Travis Hunter.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute in terms of context of the game. I haven't been paying attention now. I noticed some new NIL stuff coming out now. What is this ruling this week? Are colleges going to pay players now?
Yeah, I saw that it's based on how many times. I imagine it's not a huge revenue stream. that it's probably
you're talking about. So we saw there's something like some reports that EA is going to break down how much they pay to colleges based on how many people play with them and how often, which I would think would have to be kind of like terrible for like, I don't know. I saw somebody say we should all play as Kent State so that we can like really boost up their money and like make them national title contenders in real life.
Because who plays like EA college football and starts a dynasty and doesn't try to build up one of the worst teams in college football to like an all like no like anyone who does a dynasty and start is Ohio State is like a sociopath because that's not fun at all. Like
well it depends on how they're skewing it because like if they're looking at that's one thing, but if they're looking at like if they're looking at like head to head online, everybody plays with like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, so it's like everybody's playing with like a top 16.
That was a weird report. It didn't really make a ton of sense to me. Like, I don't really
understand.
I'm
thinking. Like, if you're like Akron, I mean, it doesn't even like make sense in that format for you to be on the game. So I don't know. I think that might be a little bit of bump there.
Yeah.
So. Dan, you got to get a new game so we could play, Dan.
Yeah, well, I guess we got to get the new game too, so we can. I think Delaware is in the game this year. I saw that Delaware football, so you can play as Jared Porter, you can play as Sean Lee Jr. on Pitt, you can play some of these Mid-Penn guys. Anthony Smith, I expect him to have a better overall than he did a year ago. So some Mid-Penn guys that can be the cornerstones of your dynasty.
I saw some folks griping online that the HBCU schools aren't in it again. So that would be interesting.
Is that a contract thing, or are they not? I guess they're not division. They're not.
A lot of them are FCS and stuff. Yeah. So it would be neat to put them in there, even if you just like put in there like a couple of their classic games and stuff, because those are kind of fun. I haven't been to a couple like the Yak Swag Challenge and stuff. So
you can download like the uniforms, but yeah.
Well, Dan, that's our first 2 mailbag submissions. Again, if you have any questions like Ralphus and Douglas did, again. Those guys are near and dear to my heart now.
I kind of feel like we have to add a like one of those quick speaking addendums. It's like these guys aren't real. We actually.
What are you talking about, Dan?
I think that
you don't think that somebody could be that big of a fan of me.
Honestly, yes.
I am more worried about you being hauled into HR for an ethics violation.
There's no ethics violation here. Dan says they're not real. I like to think that they might be. I think the listeners, I think avid listeners to this program appreciate my value and probably could imagine these being real.
You can't really give like an ethics violation if you're just hearing voices in your head. So I guess that could be your argument.
Well, listen, Dan, you don't have to be a hater, Dan. You could be more like Douglas in Biglerville.
I'll try to be more like Douglas in Biglerville. That'll be my name next week.
So if anybody ever has any questions like these 2 guys, and I hope they send us more questions down the road, at sports, you can either send them at Twitter at Sports by B. Linder or Dan Sostek. What's your Twitter?
Dan_Sostek.
Shoot them questions there. Email Dan at dsostek at PennLive.com. Email me at blinder at PennLive.com. Be happy to answer your questions and get you in the mailbag. Feel free to heap massive praise upon me. Maybe leave Dan off of that. He doesn't need to be pumped up any more than he already is. And that's that. That's the mailbag. Dan, we had some stuff to talk about this week. Last week, we kind of talked about some things we were looking for in the Mid-Penn. We're in the summer now, and teams are really starting to gear up for the fall. So it's like there's some interesting things to look forward to coming out of the summer. Things we got an eye on going through the summer. I know you wrote down some things. What you got there, Dan, for statewide?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest storyline in the state right now has pretty clearly got to be you got to go to 6A, and you have to go to the very top, and you have to go to the Philadelphia area, and maybe kind of our area. But I'll start with the Philadelphia area. Basically, is LaSalle better than St. Joe's Prep this year? And it's an interesting question because I think you're never going to be quote unquote better than St. Joe's Prep in terms of the amount of depth that team program has, kind of the reliability it has. But LaSalle did beat them once last year before losing the playoffs. And you could argue LaSalle kind of the top level talent for maybe the first time matches, or even at this point surpasses St. Joe's Prep's top level talent. And you just wonder if this is the year that LaSalle can upend them in, say, and kind of get to that state title game. And then obviously we have our area team that really feels like it can make some noise in 6A in Harrisburg. Basically, the big question is this a year where St. Joe's Prep is vulnerable? But then again, you look at their quarterback, Charlie Folk. He's now on ESPN's top ESPN 300 as a recruit. Clearly, the evaluators like what they see from him. So there's always the chance that he could really level up from his junior year, from his sophomore year. Jet Washington could level up from his freshman year.
Harrison,
yeah. Jet Harrison could level up from his freshman year, and St. Joe's Prep is just a world beater again. But I'm telling you, I maybe it's because I'm looking for, new blood and new excitement, but I really think that LaSalle has an argument that they're the best team in the state, at least starting the year.
Yeah, I mean, LaSalle's got maybe my favorite quarterback in the state, Gavin Sidward, a Missouri commit. Probably has the top playmaker in the state, Joey O'Brien, who's down to, I think, a top 5 with a commitment date of June the 20th, I believe. Yeah. Or maybe even a top 3. He just announced that. See if you can look that up while I'm talking. And then you got the match. When they play St. Joe's, you got folks.
You've also got Grayson. I'm gonna butcher his last name.
McHugh, I think it's McHugh.
Yeah, and
the big offensive tackle.
Yeah, big offensive. They're really loaded for this year. And yeah, Joey O'Brien down to 4. Clemson's also involved.
Clemson who? Clemson, Penn State,
Notre Dame, and Oregon.
Yeah. So good top 4. Joey O'Brien special. I think Elias Coates right there with him. I would give him a slight edge as like the top go get it type receiver in the state. But I see a lot of people saying he could be a safety at the next level. He can play all over the place. I think he likes to call himself an athlete, which means he can play multiple positions. I love that kid. But you look at that matchup, Gavin Sidwell at quarterback, Joey O'Brien at wide receiver, and then over at St. Joe's, like you said, Charlie Folk, who's now like a nationally ranked recruit, and Jet Harrison, who, if that name sounds familiar, Marvin Harrison Jr. is his brother, and Marvin Harrison's his dad. And we know that St. Joe's is going to have other playmakers too. That's going to be a fun game. Harrisburg is sort of always on that periphery trying to figure out how to match firepower with those Philly schools. And I think they're going to be good this year. If they get that quarterback situation figured out, which they got exciting prospects there, Elias Koch at wide receiver. I think Masai Mickens is going to have a huge year, the Penn State commit. He's been working out with Lance Dean, who trains Micah Parsons. We've had him on this podcast. And I don't know. I just got a feeling this year it's going to be. I watched this film last year. I thought it was really good. I think he's going to have a huge senior year. So I'm excited there.
Yeah, to me, it really does feel like, I guess we said this last year, and I picked Central Catholic to beat St. Joe's Prep in the game, and it looked like an absolute buffoon. And Central Catholic's also pretty loaded too this year. Like the 6A, I said 5 minutes ago, I think LaSalle might be a little better, but man, when you get to actually saying, I don't think St. Joe's Prep is going to win the 6A state title, it's hard for that to come out of your mouth. Like, they've just been so dominant for so long. And then it's one thing to like see the scores on the paper and everything. It's another thing to go cover their game, see how big that roster is, see how they warm up, see how much it almost feels like you're watching like a college football team. Just the size of guys that aren't even seeing the field yet. I'm sure there's going to be some running backs that we don't even know about that are going to blow up and immediately have like an Ohio State offer. But man, I just think that LaSalle proved it last year that they can hang with this team. There's something about Gavin Sidwar to me that he just feels like one of those kids that is a like pure winner. And he feels like a kid that's not leaving college or high school without at least getting in that state title game. There's a lot of football left to be played, but I think that this LaSalle team has a chance to be really special.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
It's funny because it's probably 2-3 months ago now. I was up late watching some film, and I was going to Gavin Sidwar's film, and I found like filming him in like when he was 13 playing in like middle school. I sent it to Dan. He was throwing touchdowns all over middle schoolers. He also, I believe, was about the same size as he is now when he was 13, which is like 6'4". He was like looked like a giant playing quarterback compared to all those other kids, but it was kind of fun to see that. So. They got a quick side note, Dan, on Harrisburg. I mentioned Harrisburg, and we'll jump back into it. Did you see our guy Micah Parsons working out with Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I think I could hang one of those workouts.
Yeah, I bet you could.
I can turn the edge a little. I mean, we're getting like
it's so crazy. Yeah. Micah's so explosive and such a crazy athlete, but it's so like Micah might be the best athlete in football, but then you look at him next to Myles Garrett. And I don't think Myles Garrett's from this earth.
No, I honestly think you say that Micah Parsons might be the best. I've said for a while I think Myles Garrett is. Like when you watch him, I don't know if you watched him in the Celebrity All-Star basketball game he played in. The fact that guy can like jump up and dunk a basketball the way he can at his weight is absolutely insane.
Yeah, they might be the top two, but it's just insane. Like. How much different he looks than like any other athlete in the world. It's like he looks like the baddest professional wrestler you'd ever see. But anyway, back to our statewide storylines, Dan. What you got next?
Yeah, I mean, kind of around. I guess we'll go back to Philly in a second, but my other one is going to the lower classes. We kind of had a big shakeup where Southern Columbia didn't win a state title. And it's been a long time since that happened. And I kind of wonder the intricacies of those classes. But you do wonder, is Southern Columbia's time up as that dominating force in 2A, right? They're in 2A. Troy ended up winning the state title 25-24. They were a heck of a football team. Is their time up as, a dominating force today? Or are we going to fast forward to December and be like, oh, well, they just blew out every team by 50 again?
It's a great question. I was thinking of that too, because it wasn't just that they didn't get there last year. Honestly, they won it the year before, but they were on the ropes. And really, I think they lost a game or two that season where they don't really lose a lot. And last year, they lost a couple games that they don't normally lose. So it is interesting to see where that program is. A whole string of Garcias come through. I think they still have one coming through there, and those guys were awesome players, but they might finally be running out of Garcias. And I don't know, really interested.
Yeah. So that's just a quick one. I think it's hard when you're looking at the statewide stuff for a team that win however many straight. I lost track of them. Next one, kind of going back to Philadelphia. There are some other interesting Philly teams. I guess Emotep's also in that 6A. I think they're kind of a step below LaSalle and St. Joe's Prep, but you can't ever count them out. But two other Philly schools that I think are really interesting this year are Roman Catholic and Coatesville. They've got some high-end talent. The Coatesville team, they've got all of a sudden they're going to have a lot of coaches coming through those doors to see. I mean, I know Terry Wiggins is committed, but you know how stuff goes with this. People never stop trying to recruit these guys. And then Max Hiller is one of the top offensive linemen in the area. It's just I think that they're going to be a super fascinating team to watch. And then Roman Catholic, another guy that it's just easy to label as a winner is Samaj Beals. He almost beat Bishop McDevitt last year in one of a few good state championship games last year. Would not be shocked if that's the matchup again this year. And if it is, I think we're in for a treat because I think that program's another one that just under Rick Preet is just keeps getting better every single year. And I'm really excited to see Samaj Beals as a senior because that's a kid that every year comes back and is a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't even know if we actually mentioned him last week talking about top senior quarterbacks, but I mean, he's right there in that argument. I mean, he was a guy again that, like, as a freshman or sophomore, got an Alabama offer when Saban was still there. Now, I think he's kind of stated that 6', 6'1" range is maybe why it slowed down on him a little bit, but he's got a good arm. It makes plays, and they got some playmakers around him too. So yeah, Roman Callick's really, really interesting, and they've kind of been on a steady ascension throughout his career. Not just him getting a little bit better every year, them getting a little bit better every year and making it to the state title game. So and then, hey, Bishop McDevitt in 5A. I mean, we talked about him a little bit last week, but they have to reload a lot. I mean, the state's right there. You talk about the two statistically greatest passers in Pennsylvania history were Stone Saunders last year and the year before. Still has Alex Herbie right from this area, but Stone's gone. They've lost a lot, but they just got a commit to Eastern Michigan and their running back, Nazir Jones-Davis, and then Liam Fuller, the tight end, committed to UConn.
Jim Mora Jr.
Yeah, and they got some other guys too who have gotten some offers and really probably didn't have to step up because of the guys they had. Dan Jonte Quick's a guy who was on our All-PA team last year, who we haven't talked about a lot. He's got a couple small offers. One of the best wide receivers in Pennsylvania. So in that 5A, that's going to be interesting.
Quick got big offers at this point. He's got a couple Power 4 offers now. I think he's got Syracuse and Pitt and one other school, I think. So I think that, we've talked a little bit about McDevitt, but they are just such a fascinating team. I talked to Liam Fuller over the phone after he committed, and he ended the call telling us don't sleep on Bishop McDevitt, which I thought was a very funny line to say, at least on surface, because you're like, I don't think we're ever going to sleep on Bishop McDevitt. But I get what he was saying, because from the outside, as good as McDevitt is, everyone's always going to look at a program like that with the production Stone Saunders had and be like, they lost Stone Saunders, they're going to take a step back. But if you start really digging into the roster, I mean, they are still a flat-out state championship roster. I think, honestly, one of the biggest losses they're going to have is J.J. Torres. Besides Saunders, is they're going to have to figure out some stuff on the offensive line a little bit. They always have to, though, and always do. But man, I'm not sure there's a better unit on any team in the state on any other position than Bishop McDevitt's linebackers this year. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Maurice Barnes, Rick Brown, Nazir Jones-Davis, and then if you include the safeties who kind of play in the box there, you have Fuentes Breen and Tyler Reinhardt. That's absolutely ridiculous. And then they also have plenty of depth back there too. And who knows, as Epp always says, you don't know who's on the roster until you get to camp in March. So there's always a chance for more.
I don't know if we mentioned that on the podcast yet. Did Rick Brown, who was a standout, had a heck of a year at Harrisburg last year, and then got some Division I offers off of it, has transferred over to Bishop McDevitt. Really might be the best linebacker in the area. We'll see. Zach Brown over at CD East is pretty special. Maurice Barnes is pretty special. So we'll see. We'll see. But Rick is fast riser.
I don't know how you're going to deal with all those guys. The amount of flexibility there. That's what I said. I don't know how McDevitt wins this year is going to look the same, but I think that defense is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Also,
on paper, it's nasty. On paper,
and a big key for them. A guy that I like that hasn't done a ton, at least in terms of statistics, that I think everyone needs to kind of look out for is Teron Dennis, who's a defensive end. Last year's a freshman. If you look at this kid, he does not look like a freshman. He looks almost like a college football. He's absolutely huge. And Jeff Wechter trusted him late in the year to play as the edge rusher. And I could see with Lucas Lawler graduating, that kid just blowing up and having a monster season. So he's kind of a sleeper pick to break out this year for that defense.
Well, a little inside scoop here for people. Dan was at the Cumberland Valley game last year. I was texting me and thought Teron Dennis did pretty darn well against Tyler Merrill, who's a Notre Dame commit and one of the top linemen in the nation. So Dan's been saying that for a while, so definitely keep an eye out for him. I'll say another big key.
Wechter has been really high on him to me too. That whole program has said, there obviously he's a freshman. You can't rely on him as an every down superstar player as a freshman, but they're really high on him. So
another name to keep an eye on there for them, obviously, is their quarterback, Sebastian Williams, as a kid that they've been excited about for like 2 years now, behind Stone Saunders. Obviously has not gotten a ton of playing time, but they've been preaching that he's going to be a good one. So we'll see what he can step up and do here coming into that offense.
Yeah, I forget who I was telling to, but that week 2 game between McDevitt and Harrisburg is just I'm so happy they changed the alignment so that they have to play each other, because I don't like that it's week 2. I never liked that it's week 2, but I guess like you could argue, hey, that means the teams would be healthy, but then last year we don't even get Kevin Brown in it.
Yeah.
But
well, you know what? You get big games at the end of the year with them. You know what I'm saying? You get the big playoff games typically with Harrisburg and McDevitt. So I mean, if you look at it that way, it's fun to have a big game like out the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, but man, that like not many other conferences get to have two state title contenders playing each other in week 2 in a divisional game.
Well, what else you got, Dan? What else did you write down here?
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but just the quarterback play in general, because obviously you lose Stone Saunders and Alex Irving back years, but there's still a ton of guys, a ton of Division I level guys. We mentioned a couple. We mentioned Samaj Beals, but I think the big one that don't think he's playing quarterback at the next level, but that we haven't mentioned yet is Matt Sig. The people in Western PA, they've been trying to like hammer down the exact number, but he'll never pass Stone or Alex Irby in passing touchdowns. But the combined passing and rushing touchdown numbers are going to be pretty crazy for him by the end of the year. And I know that's not typically how you measure touchdowns, but I think it's a good measure of just how impactful that kid has been at quarterback for 4 years. And he's a guy that clearly has been crushing it in camps and crushing it everywhere because his ranking keeps going up. I think he's ranked the number 1 player in the state on 24/7. It could be number 1 or number 2 on 24/7. So you have guys like him. You have guys like Dante Carr. There's still going to be a ton of good quarterback play across the state. CJ Folk we mentioned before.
Well, we mentioned a lot of the top like seniors and stuff last week, but I'm glad you brought him up because you know what? We didn't mention him last week. The reason we didn't mention him in the top quarterbacks last week because I think we're kind of thinking more along quarterback college prospects, and guys who committed to play quarterback. Matt Sieg's committed to Penn State, the Fort Cherry quarterback. He's not in the same class as those guys we mentioned in terms of, like Dan said, how he throws the ball. He's not nearly as good a passer, but in terms of overall what he means to his team, what he does with his legs and his arm, we should have mentioned him just from the high school football standpoint as one of the top quarterbacks in Pennsylvania. It's just that he's not really your conventional, going to be your college quarterback. And that's probably why we forgot to leave him off. But I'm glad you brought him up. He's been on this podcast. Heck of a kid. We know that.
And it's just so impressive. It's so impressive, right? What he's basically, I don't want to say single-handedly because that's a good Fort Cherry team, but what he has done for that program to, how good they've become with him at quarterback, I think it just says a ton about just the impact he has. You don't see too many quarterbacks also starting at safety too. They've officially moved him on 24/7. They don't even list him as an athlete anymore. They just list him at safety. So I think that's
I watched this film. He covers a heck of a lot of ground. He's super fast, very instinctive, has a good idea where the ball's going. He gets there, not afraid to tackle you, not afraid to hit you. I think he's a heck of a player. I don't know if I'm putting him over Kevin Brown, the Harrisburg lineman, who just went to some camp. It might have been the Penn State camp where they were just raving over him, Dan, about how shredded he was as an offensive tackle. And, oh, by the way, he also dominated to such a level on the defensive line that people were wondering, well, maybe he'll end up there. He kind of looks like freaking J.J. Watt on defense or something, or one of the Watt brothers.
He's fallen in rankings just because he got hurt. Like it's pretty clear that he doesn't have film from his sophomore year and probably didn't get to go to as many camps as he wanted and other kids did. But I imagine after this year, and the fun thing about Kevin too is that last year when he came back, they were using him at H-back, which I don't think many other offensive tackle prospects could have pulled off. So,
Kevin checks the box on one of my big rules about guys. Like I always say, if you go to a field and everybody kind of looks the same out there, none of them are going to the league. It's usually guys that are different. He definitely looks different than anybody else you see on the field. I like to say he looks like he was built in a lab. So there's that. And yeah, I think Joey O'Brien's up there. I think they're my 1 and 2 right now in the state. But Matt Sieg is pretty darn good. Got a good head on his shoulders. So glad you brought him up. You got anything else, Dan, for statewide?
Just the last thing, kind of along the Sieg thing, but we've kind of went this whole time without talking about my college area, which is the Whippeal. Just, it's always like, obviously you're going to get the true lay of the land. You go over to Western PA, there's tons of coverage of the Whippeal. We kind of have to sort of cover it through reading about stuff online, watching huddle tape and stuff. But I believe this year no Whippeal team won a state title. Is that correct? I think they went 0 for 6.
It was a down year. I'm not sure, but I think it was a down year.
And it's hard to keep the Whippeal down for that long. I wonder if what Whippeal team is going to be that team to kind of break through, because 6A is going to be tough. Pine Richland's always really, really good. They're another team in 5A that I think could, obviously they played Bishop McDevitt pretty tough. Jay Timmons was a guy that I know you've loved watching his film. He's electric. He's committed to Indiana. Yeah, he's a special kid. Westinghouse is always going to be up there. Peters Township has been really good the last few years. So, yeah, I just think the Whippeal is interesting because I don't think there's that necessarily one dominant team. North Allegheny, you can always count on them to be in Altoona at the end of the year. So, yeah, I'm interested to see which Whippeal team comes out, because I think I just double-checked. They did not win any state titles last year, which is – you don't usually get that.
Well, there you go, Dan. We got anything else?
No, I was just going to bring up the McDevitt kids committing, but you kind of mentioned it. Just Liam Fuller, obviously, really big tight end. I don't think he necessarily has gotten to showcase how good of a receiver he is, because McDevitt has so many other kids to throw the ball to. But he had a big state title game. I think he had 40 or 50 yards. He told me that they're really excited about him, think he can play early at UConn. As a versatile guy. I asked him, he's also a good basketball player. I asked him if he would offer to Dan Hurley to be a practice player. He said we could get some Liam Fuller and Liam McNeely action going, because that's one of their best basketball players. But and then Nazir Jones-Davis, he has a chip on his shoulder, I think, still, even after committing. I think he feels like he has been undervalued this whole time as a recruit. But I think he also told me people are too worried about what school they're playing at and not what the culture is and what school is going to get them ready to go. So I think he just kind of wanted to lock in his spot at Eastern Michigan. We said it last week. He was maybe the best running back in the state in the postseason, and also playing awesome linebacker too. So yeah, 2 really good players. I imagine we're going to get some more in the coming weeks and months. Got guys like Jonte Quick, Jerome LaRue Jr., Howard Holton, Tyler Reinhardt, all getting tons of looks and offers. Rick Brown too. So I imagine there will be more McDevitt commitment stories as the season goes. But those 2 kids, big parts of last year's state title game, both also said it's cool to commit, but they're worried about winning another state title. So
yeah, well, look, there's some statewide lines. Dan, next week, watch your email for mailbag. Maybe we get some more good questions next week. Maybe my guy Ralph will email him. Maybe our guy from Biglerville. Now, before we get off here, Dan, I wanted to say, I brought this up in our last podcast. Former Milton Hershey standout Michael Bleedy Jr. His brother just signed as an undrafted rookie free agent with the Titans. That's not a lot of money for people that don't know. I don't even think there's a ton of guaranteed money in that. He might not even make the team. And I only say that not to be negative, but because family's currently running a GoFundMe. We talked about it on a recent podcast. Bleedy, who I know Dan worked with a lot, and I think he thinks the world of the kid, was always good to him. Everybody at Milton Hershey does. He was shot in front of the family's home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, back on May 29th, I believe. He is still paralyzed, from what I understand. His dad kind of gave an update on Facebook. It really didn't say much about it, but just kind of thanked people. He has a GoFundMe out there going. Again, it's BLIDI, Michael Bleedy. You can find him on Facebook too. I would encourage you to look at that because there's going to be a lot. I think they had raised over like $15,000, Dan, at one point, last I looked. But if you're talking about being paralyzed, which he currently is, and the care that goes in with that, there's a lot of uncertainty, and they're going to need a lot of financial support, I'm sure. So go look that up. The other one I wanted to bring up too, I don't think we talked about on the pod, but a couple of weeks ago, very tragic news involving a two-time All-PA Player of the Year, Julian Fleming. He was in an ATV accident. His girlfriend, Alyssa Boyd, was killed in that accident. Been rolling accident, I believe. They hit a deer driving on an ATV. Great-looking young couple, Dan. Julian posted on his Instagram a photo of them embracing on the beach and said, "Not a day will go by without you on my mind. Love you forever." Heartbreaking stuff to see there. I haven't talked to Julian Fleming in quite some time. He and I talked a good bit while he was in high school. I called him to Southern Columbia. I know Dave Jones, our former columnist, actually went down there and did a really nice story on him. When he had a lot of attention, Dan, he always picked up the phone for me and was always pretty good to work with. Julian's college career probably didn't turn out the way a lot of people thought it would. He had some injury issues. Signed as an undrafted free agent with the Green Bay Packers. Failed the physical. Got sent home, and then this happened. So a lot of hurt, a lot of tragedy there. My heart goes out to him. If you guys hadn't heard the story, there it is. Make sure you say a prayer for Julian Fleming. Again, just a great young man from everything I know, and one of the best players to ever come through Pennsylvania. So, and then on a bummer, Dan, couple bummers, but life is life.
I've always debated about whether we should do the bummer stuff at the start or the finish, because it is always kind of weird. There's no good transition from any of this stuff. So,
well, you can't pick up from that. There's no picking up and getting cheerful again from that. You got to go have a drink, and for your high school kids, that means a Diet Pepsi or something. I don't know. But it's not good stuff. But seriously, as I've gotten older, Dan, I sit up and I think about stuff and why bad stuff happens to good people. And I just don't know. But prayers up to both of those families. I believe there's also a GoFundMe for Alyssa Boyd's family, which was Julian's girlfriend. So seek those out if you can help. Look, I've been on the end of a GoFundMe when I went through my bone marrow transplant. It's not even just about, I can tell you guys, when you're sitting there and you're up against it, it's not even really about the money, which helps and is needed in the situation, but the support and seeing the support sometimes for people you don't even know come in is a real morale boost. So if you can help, please do. And Dan, we got a podcast, ending on the down note, but like I said, you can't pick it up from there. So Dan, once again, tell them how to find you.
Dan_Sostek. Then if you have any mailbag stuff, maybe I'll come prepared with my own mailbag next week.
Let's see what you got, Dan. I'm sure you'll get some questions now. So, and I'm at Sports by B Linder at I'm at Sports by B Linder on Twitter. Our producer Megan, tell them how to find you.
I'm at Savvy Literate Anywhere, and if you want to debunk any of these mailbags, please email me at mheaton@PennLive.com.
All the hatred towards the mailbags, you guys just cannot accept that I may have some really admiring fans who see me for what I am and appreciate my value, Dan and Megan. Thank you, Ralphus in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. Thank you, Douglas in Biglerville. Well, maybe we'll hear from those guys next week. We'll see if anybody messages Dan with questions. Until then, check us out at PennLive.com. Talk to you guys next week.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.